The cabin lights were dimmed to a calm evening glow as Flight 782 cruised smoothly above the clouds, the steady hum of the engines blending with quiet conversations and the soft rustle of seatbelts. It was supposed to be an ordinary domestic flight, nothing more than a routine hop between two busy cities. People were tired, distracted, half asleep. No one was looking for trouble. No one ever does at 37,000 feet. Emily Carter moved down the aisle with an easy smile, her posture relaxed, her movements precise but unremarkable. To everyone on board, she was just another flight attendant doing her job. Coffee refills, checking seat belts, answering questions about connections. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her hair neatly tied back, her expression warm and professional. She blended in so well that most passengers wouldn't remember her face 10 minutes later. But beneath the calm exterior, her senses were wide awake. Emily noticed things most people didn't. The way a man near the back avoided eye contact when she passed. The unnatural stiffness in his shoulders. The brief, coded glance exchanged between two passengers who pretended not to know each other. She clocked it all without reacting, storing each detail quietly, the way she'd been trained to do years ago, long before she ever wore this uniform. She stopped beside an elderly woman struggling with her tray table and helped her with a gentle touch. "There you go, ma'am," Emily said softly. "Thank you, dear," the woman replied, smiling. "You're very kind." Emily returned the smile and moved on, her mind already calculating probabilities. 99 times out of 100, her instincts would amount to nothing. A false alarm, a tired brain, but that remaining 1%? That was the one that mattered. Halfway down the aisle, the intercom crackled lightly as the captain's voice came on, calm and reassuring. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Richard Lawson. We've reached our cruising altitude and expect a smooth flight from here. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride." Emily paused for half a second when she heard his voice. She knew that tone. Calm, confident, experienced. She felt a strange comfort in it. She finished her round and stepped into the galley, where Mark Jensen, another flight attendant, was securing the beverage cart. "Everything okay?" Mark asked casually. "Yeah," Emily replied. "Just one of those flights." Mark nodded. "You get a weird feeling too?" Emily met his eyes briefly, then looked away as she adjusted a stack of cups. "I always do," she said lightly. "Occupational hazard." They shared a quiet laugh, and Mark went back to his work. Emily leaned against the counter for a moment, exhaled slowly, and let her shoulders relax just enough to appear normal. No one here knew that years ago, she'd flown jets worth more than this entire aircraft, that she'd logged combat hours in skies far less forgiving than this peaceful stretch of airspace. No one knew she'd been decorated for missions that never made the news, and that was exactly how she wanted it. The first scream came without warning that I cut through the cabin like a blade, sharp and raw, snapping heads upright and freezing conversations mid-sentence. Emily was moving before the sound, even fully registered, her body reacting on instinct. Another shout followed, louder, angrier. "Everyone stays seated." The voice didn't belong to the crew. Emily stepped into the aisle and saw it immediately. The man she'd noticed earlier was on his feet, gripping a passenger by the collar, his other hand holding something dark and metallic. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be. Panic spread faster than fire. "Get down," someone yelled. A woman began to cry. A child screamed. Mark was frozen near the galley, eyes wide. Emily caught his gaze and gave a small, almost invisible shake of her head. Not yet. 2 more figures stood up further back, coordinating with practiced efficiency. This wasn't random. This wasn't desperation. This was planned. "Listen carefully," the first man shouted. "We are in control of this aircraft now. Do exactly what we say, and no one gets hurt." The words echoed through the cabin, heavy and suffocating. Emily's heart rate remained steady. Her breathing stayed slow. Fear was natural. Panic was optional. She moved with purpose, hands raised slightly, her face calm. "Sir," she said evenly, "let's keep everyone calm. We can talk this through." The man turned toward her, eyes narrowing. "You," he snapped. "You work here?" "Yes," Emily replied. "I'm a flight attendant. My job is to keep people safe." He laughed harshly. Then do your job. Tell them to stay quiet. Emily turned slowly to the passengers, her voice firm but soothing. Everyone, please remain seated. Stay calm. We'll get through this. The familiarity of command slipped into her tone so naturally that people obeyed without thinking. The crying softened. The chaos dipped just enough to breathe. The man nodded, satisfied. Good. Now get the cockpit open. Emily felt the shift in her chest then. The moment the situation crossed an invisible line. She met his eyes again. I can contact the captain, she said carefully. But protocol, he slammed the butt of his weapon against the seat, making a loud crack. Now, Emily turned and walked toward the cockpit door, her steps unhurried. Every inch of her was alert. The reinforced door loomed ahead, solid and unyielding. She reached for the intercom handset beside it. Captain Lawson, she said calmly, we have an emergency situation in the cabin. There was a brief pause before his voice returned, sharper now. Emily confirmed. She chose her words carefully. Multiple hostile passengers. They're demanding access to the cockpit. Silence stretched for a fraction of a second. Then, understood, the captain said. Stand by. The man behind her pressed closer. What did he say? He's listening, Emily replied. That's a good start. Before the man could respond, one of his partners shouted from the back, We've got movement. Emily's eyes flicked toward the sound. A passenger, young, athletic, had tried to intervene and was now restrained, forced back into his seat. The tension ratcheted up again, sharp and volatile. The leader turned back to Emily, his patience thinning. Open it, he said through clenched teeth. Emily placed her palm flat against the cockpit door. Her reflection stared back at her in the polished surface. For just a moment, she saw herself as she'd been years ago, helmet on, visor down, engines roaring beneath her. She remembered the weight of responsibility, the clarity that came when everything was on the line. She tapped the intercom again. Captain, she said, her voice steady, they're escalating. I know, Captain Lawson replied. We're initiating procedures. The man grabbed her arm hard. Enough. The pain barely registered. Emily turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze. If you force this, people will get hurt, she said quietly. You don't want that. He sneered. You don't know what I want. Emily didn't know. She saw in his eyes, not ideology, not desperation. Control. Fear as leverage. She nodded once. Then let me help you do this without anyone dying. The audacity of her words made him hesitate. Just for a heartbeat, in that heartbeat, Emily made a decision. She let her shoulders slump slightly, her confidence dimming just enough to sell it. I'm just a flight attendant, she said softly. I don't want trouble. He released her arm and laughed. Smart choice. Behind the cockpit door, the flight deck was a different world. Captain Lawson and First Officer Daniel Reeves exchanged a look, hands moving with deliberate precision. They were buying time. Back in the cabin, Emily returned to the galley, her movements compliant on the surface. Mark whispered urgently, Emily, what do we do? She leaned close, her voice barely audible. Stay calm. Do exactly what they say unless I tell you otherwise. What are you planning? He asked, fear etched into his face. Emily met his eyes, and for the first time, let a hint of something else show. Not fear. Resolve. I'm planning to end this. Minutes dragged by like hours. The hijackers repositioned themselves, one moving closer to the cockpit, another watching the cabin. Passengers sat frozen, clinging to armrests, prayers whispered under breaths. Emily stood quietly near the galley, hands folded, watching, listening, calculating angles and timing. The aircraft banked slightly as it adjusted course, smooth and subtle. Most people didn't notice. Emily did. The leader turned toward the cockpit again. Time's up, he shouted. Open the door, or we start making examples. Emily stepped forward. Wait, she said. He spun on her. What now? She took a breath. If you're taking control of the plane, you'll need someone who understands aviation. Someone who can communicate with the pilots properly. He stared at her, suspicious. You? She nodded. I'm trained in cockpit procedures. He laughed loudly. You expect me to believe a drink server can fly a plane? Emily didn't flinch. I expect you to believe that if you want to land this aircraft safely, you'll need every advantage you can get. The laughter faded. He studied her face, searching for a crack, a tell. He found none. What's your name? He asked. Emily, she replied. Emily Carter. He gestured sharply. Prove it. Talk to them. Emily turned to the intercom once more, her heart calm, her mind razor-sharp. Captain Lawson, she said clearly, I need you to hear me. I'm listening, he replied. She chose her next words carefully, threading truth through ambiguity. If this continues, things will get worse. But I believe I can de-escalate, if you trust me. Another pause. Then, quietly, you always were good under pressure, the captain said. The leader's eyes narrowed. What was that? Emily turned back to him, meeting his stare. That was me telling you the truth, she said. You picked the wrong flight. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, and somewhere deep inside, the combat pilot who had once ruled the skies felt the familiar click of focus, the moment before action, when everything else fell away. The leader stared at Emily as if weighing her worth in the span of a single breath. The cabin felt tighter now, every eye fixed on the space between them. Fear was still there, thick and real, but something else had entered it, uncertainty. You talk like you're more than you look, he said slowly. Emily didn't answer right away. She let the silence work for her. Silence made people uncomfortable. People made mistakes when they were uncomfortable. I'm exactly what I look like, she said at last. Someone who doesn't want innocent people hurt. One of the other hijackers shifted near the rear of the plane. We're wasting time, he muttered. Just force the door. Emily turned slightly, keeping both men in her peripheral vision. That door doesn't open the way you think it does, she said calmly. And if you damage it at this altitude, you won't get what you want. No one will. The leader frowned. You threatening us? No, Emily replied. I'm explaining physics. That earned a few nervous laughs from passengers who immediately regretted it and went quiet again. The leader raised a hand, silencing everyone. Fine, he said. You say you can help. You say you understand aviation. Then you're coming with me. He gestured toward the cockpit. Emily nodded as if she'd expected nothing else. All right. As she walked forward, Mark caught her sleeve for just a second. She leaned close enough for him to hear her whisper. Trust me. He swallowed and nodded, though fear still clouded his face at the cockpit door. The leader pressed close behind her, his presence heavy, threatening. Emily lifted the intercom handset again. Captain Lawson, she said evenly, they want to speak directly. I figured, the captain replied. His voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it now, sharp with awareness. Stand by. The leader leaned in. Tell him to open the door. Emily glanced sideways at him. He won't, she said simply. Not unless he believes it keeps people alive. The leader's jaw tightened. Then make him believe. Emily pressed the intercom button again. Captain, she said, they think I can help coordinate. I'm asking you to play along. There was a pause, then a quiet exhale on the other end. Understood, Lawson said. You have 1 minute. Emily turned back to the leader. You hear that? 1 minute. He studied her again, suspicion warring with urgency. Start talking. She did, but not to him. She turned slightly, projecting her voice just enough for the nearby passengers to hear without sounding theatrical. Everyone, she said calmly, keep your heads down and remain seated. This will be over soon. The leader grabbed her shoulder. Stop reassuring them. Emily looked at his hand, then back at his face. If they panic, you lose control, she said. You don't want that. He hesitated, then released her. Behind the cockpit door, Captain Lawson and First Officer Reeves were already moving. Switches flipped. Systems adjusted. They weren't opening the door, but they were setting the stage. Emily tapped the intercom again. Captain, confirm you're willing to negotiate. Yes, Lawson replied. Conditional. The leader leaned in. Tell him our demands. Emily nodded. State them. He blinked, thrown off by her calm. We need the plane diverted. To where? She asked. He named a location. Emily didn't react. She simply relayed it through the intercom. Captain, they're demanding a diversion. Another pause. That's not possible, Lawson said. Fuel constraints. The leader's eyes flared. He's lying. Emily raised a hand slightly, a subtle gesture. He might be, she said, or he might not. If you want this to end without force, you need to work within reality. One of the hijackers shouted from the back. We're losing control here. Emily turned just enough to meet his gaze. No, she said firmly. You're losing time. The words hit harder than shouting ever could. The leader stepped closer, lowering his voice. Who are you really? Emily met his eyes without blinking. Someone who's been where you are, she said quietly, and knows how it ends. For the first time, doubt crept into his expression. The aircraft shuddered slightly, not violently, just enough to be felt. A routine adjustment. But in the cabin, it felt like a warning. What was that? The leader snapped. Emily listened, feeling the vibration through the soles of her shoes. Turbulence, she said. Nothing serious. But it reminds me, we don't have much margin. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. If you push this, you won't win. Not today. His grip tightened on his weapon. You're very confident for someone unarmed. Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile. I'm never unarmed. Before he could ask what she meant, a shout erupted near the middle of the cabin. One of the hijackers had turned away for just a second, distracted by the cockpit exchange. That was all it took that a passenger lunged. Not recklessly, but decisively. The hijacker stumbled, his balance off. Chaos threatened to explode. Emily moved. She stepped in fast, precise, her movements economical. She didn't strike wildly. She redirected. A wrist twisted, a shoulder leveraged. The weapon clattered harmlessly onto the floor. Gasps rippled through the cabin. The leader spun, eyes wide. What did you? Emily didn't give him time to finish. She closed the distance in a heartbeat, using his momentum against him. Years of training took over, muscle memory sharper than thought. She swept his leg, guided him down, controlled the fall. No brutality, no excess, just efficiency. He hit the floor hard, the air rushing from his lungs in a stunned wheeze. For a moment, no one moved. Even the other hijackers froze, shocked by how fast it had happened. Stay down, Emily said, her voice steady. Authoritative point. One of the remaining hijackers raised his weapon toward her. Don't, she said, meeting his eyes. You've already lost. He hesitated. Around him, passengers were no longer frozen. Some were backing away. Others were standing, resolve replacing fear. Emily straightened slowly, never taking her eyes off him. This ends now, she said. Put it down. The man's hand shook. He looked at the leader on the floor, at the restrained hijacker near the middle, at the growing resistance around him. He dropped the weapon. Relief washed through the cabin like a wave. Some people cried openly now. Others slumped back into their seats, shaking. Emily moved quickly, securing the remaining threat with help from willing passengers. Mark appeared at her side, eyes wide with awe. Emily, he breathed. Who are you? She gave him a brief look. Later, she turned back to the cockpit door and tapped the intercom. Captain Lawson, she said. The situation is under control. There was a beat, then a long exhale. Copy that, the captain replied. Outstanding work. The plane began a gentle descent shortly after, diverting safely to the nearest suitable airport. Emergency crews were waiting when they touched down, lights flashing against the darkening sky. As the aircraft rolled to a stop, applause broke out. Hesitant at first, then swelling until it filled the cabin. Emily stood quietly near the galley, letting it wash past her without absorbing it. Law enforcement boarded swiftly, taking custody of the hijackers. Questions followed, rapid, overlapping, urgent. Emily answered what she needed to, carefully, professionally. Captain Lawson emerged from the cockpit at last. He stopped in front of her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he smiled, a tired, sincere smile. You saved a lot of lives today, he said. So did you, Emily replied. He nodded. You were always the best pilot I knew. Nearby passengers stared, confusion flickering across their faces. Pilot? Someone whispered. Emily felt the weight of their attention and shifted slightly. Former, she said gently. A long time ago. As passengers disembarked, many paused to thank her. Some hugged her. Others simply met her eyes and nodded, Words unnecessary. When the cabin was finally empty, Emily sank into a jump seat, the adrenaline draining at last. Mark sat across from her, still shaking his head. "I knew you were hiding something," he said. "But a combat pilot?" She smiled faintly. "Life takes turns." He laughed softly. "You're incredible." Emily looked down at her hands. "Steady now. I just did what needed to be done." Later, as investigators wrapped up and the night stretched on, Emily stepped onto the tarmac, breathing in the cool air. The crisis was over. The sky was quiet again. She glanced back at the aircraft. Just another plane now. Ordinary once more. Extraordinary things didn't always announce themselves, she thought. Sometimes they wore simple uniforms and walked unnoticed down narrow aisles. If this story moved you, if you believe true strength lies in calm under pressure and courage without ego, make sure to subscribe to the channel. This is Generals and Truth Stories, where powerful moments, hidden heroes, and unforgettable lessons come to life. Thank you for watching. The next story is already waiting.